Well, now to our main event. Our speaker today is, I think you all know, our message, I should say, is the state of the city, and we're pleased to have Mayor Hanwell here. And we don't have a bio, and that's kind of on our end to have it, and he didn't want me to read a bio anyways, but with a stroke of luck with technology, I went to Wikipedia, and I looked up the definition of mayor, and lo and behold, I see this picture sitting next to Wikipedia and the definition of mayor up there. So, but I think that's true. Mayor Hanwell has been our mayor since 2010. Prior to that, he spent approximately 29 years in law enforcement, 13 or 14 of which was the chief of police here right in Medina. So he is Medina through and through. We appreciate having him today. Our chamber appreciates the working relationship we have with the city and all our other strategic partners, but Mayor Hanwell is certainly one of them. And I know his two favorite fans are here today, his parents, so we're glad to see Mr. and Mrs. Hanwell here as well. Without further ado, Mayor Dennis Hanwell.
Thanks, Steve. Good afternoon. I'm glad that you're all here. I'm excited that you took the time to come and hear the many positive things that are going on with the city. Along with my folks, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my aunt and uncle are here, Lane and Carl Cobbs from Apple Valley, California. Anybody travel further than that to come today? Yeah. And my wife generally doesn't come to the State of the Cities, and she took a half-a-day vacation to come to this one. And we just celebrated our 37th anniversary, and I know, I know many of you are thinking, well, geez, we're at 50, 60, but when you're in public life, see, there's a multiplier, kind of like dog years. Maybe not quite 7 per year, but I can tell you that it's a strain. Public life is a strain on the family, and I appreciate Chris and all that she's endured in my various positions. I'd like to ask I know I have a number of the staff members, department heads that are here with us. Please stand for a second. And Councilman Jim Shields is here. I didn't see. And these are the folks that make things happen. Everything that I talk about today is a result of what these folks do day in and day out, and they carry the mission for us. So I serve on a partnership council with Superintendent Knight and some members of the school, and it's made up of the PTA members and group. And we were in a meeting this past February, and this lady was talking about when she was going to move back to Ohio from out of state. And she said, most of my family was up in the Parma area, so we were going to relocate to Parma, and this is the quote, because we didn't know any better. And she came down and took a look at our square, and they chose Medina over Parma, and now since she's been here has moved most of that family that originated up in the Parma area down to the Medina area. So that kind of tells us that the square is having a very positive impact on everything that we do, and I think you all know that. Another brief story, the Watoto youth group singing choir came to the Medina United Methodist Church. I know Dr. Dave Tennant is here, pastor of the church. Chris and I attend the church. So this group was in Medina on June 4th of this year. They'd been traveling the United States for the better part of 4 months. And when they went to the home of one of the church members where they were spending the night, the leader of that group told the children, got them all gathered up and told them, take a good look at this city, about the care, the upkeep, the way people are treated, and when you grow up to be leaders back in Uganda, this is what you want to replicate. And to me, having a group come from outside of the country we couldn't ask for a better endorsement of what we're doing day in and day out. So one of the, well, let me just explain the screen for you here first. It's not out of focus. It's artistic. Now, I am not an artistic guy. In fact, I have trouble with stick figures and even writing readably. But what they did is they took what were photos and created them to look more like paintings. So don't think your eyes or your glasses need cleaned off. This is just a different effect. So when I took office, one of the things that I wanted to stress was raising the level of service to our businesses and citizens. And when you think about that, that's hard to measure. You know, you might survey, but sometimes it depends on how the surveys ask. So I think the best way to do it is to look at the examples and draw your own conclusion. So most cities will not assist with receptacles, trash receptacles for those that are too aged or disabled to take care of it themselves. We have people living in their homes today that are trash guys week in and week out, go up to the house, take the trash to the truck, and put the cans back where the folks can get them themselves. We had a resident who stopped in, I'm sorry, not a resident, his father was a resident. He stops in, he's got a cell phone that he was given by another government agency. And he's trying, in a limited amount of days, trying to set up the visitation, set up the service, get his father buried, and get back to where he lives. And Dawn from my office helped him track down where that phone originated from. And we called we called that office, and they said, well, we're only here till 4:30. If you can get up here by 4:30, then we can help him out. And we explained the situation. He's at City Hall to drive up there. It's going to take a little bit. He may get there a little after 4:30, and we were told we were out of luck. So what Dawn did is took that phone from that fella, and then we made the arrangements to get that phone returned so that he could tend to the funeral and the issues at hand that were most important to him. We have our contractors tell us that with drainage issues in the city, because these contractors work not only in the city of Medina but in the region, that they've never seen a city that does more for their residents and their businesses than the city of Medina does. I was driving into work one day, and it's the first day of school in 2014, and a resident was outside cleaning up a cat that had been struck by a car and putting it in a trash bag. Well, I live a couple blocks from this fella. I know that trash day is Friday. The first day of school, I believe, was a Tuesday. So rather than put that in that trash bag in heat like we have today, I told him, if you just simply seal it up in a bag, we'll get a hold of our sanitation. We sent them out, and they picked it up within the hour, so he did not have to put up, with the stench of the decaying animal. With the chief's leadership, Chief Baraducci, the police officers have been trained by SUMA and the Cleveland Clinic on Narcan treatment for heroin overdoses. A number of other counties have experienced many more deaths due to the opiate addiction that we're all facing. This Narcan model policy is a model that others could replicate and help save lives. We're going to talk more about that a couple more slides from now. We had an elderly resident at 87 Circle Drive. She's waiting on the CHIP program to come in, which is usually in the summer months. Her furnace is not working last winter with those single digits. You all remember the cold. She's got one electric space heater trying to heat the house. Nino and my building official, Dan Gladish, went over there. Dan has experience with furnaces and heating and cooling, and we're able to find out that it was just a simple adjustment that he was able to get her back in heat. But it didn't stop there. Then Dawn called her back every few weeks through the winter months to check on her again and make sure that she was still secure and that the furnace was still working. And I think again that speaks to the service that we're providing. Bob Mihalko has a local photography studio in town here. He stopped in to get a senior snowplow permit for his father, who is suffering severely from cancer, going through treatments and being hospitalized in and out. And he picked up the application. When he stopped by the house an hour later, he has not turned the application in yet, by the way. When he stopped by the house an hour later, our crew had already been there and cleaned the driveway off because we wanted to make sure it was done in case Dad got released from the hospital, that he could get in safely. February 17th of this year, just to show you what a team works like together, and it's almost 5 p.m., we noticed that the water level in our Lake Road water tank just up the road here is going down severely, going down so fast and so low that if we have a fire, we're going to have trouble having enough pressure to fight it. So what we begin doing is the staff at City Hall starts sending emails to the different industries. We've got police officers and firemen and anybody that's available driving around looking on the roads for it, because obviously this would be a massive leak you wouldn't miss. But we're not having much luck with it. So we then, through Patrick's work, because we reconstructed that road, we had emails for every company on West Smith and Lake Road. We sent emails to every company, take a walk around your factories and help us find this leak. It's got to be somewhere either internal or not visible from the road. Shortly thereafter, our building official was over at a vacant building on Industrial Parkway and found that they had shut the heat off but not the water. One of those large lines that feeds the sprinkler system for the factory had given way, had come out the dock doors, frozen the whole parking lot, frozen the creek nearby, and was still running in the building. We were able to get inside, they were able to get inside, shut that valve off, and immediately the tank started to resolve itself. It took us a little bit longer to dig up the valve at the street, because at that time we had about 3.5 foot of snow and had to dig through that to get down to the valve. But that shows you something that is generally a water problem is our problem. That's how we deal with things. We all work together, we all get around the table, and we address it. We have a great staff, an excellent working relationship with the council, the chamber, Main Street Medina, Medina County Economic Development, and the County of Medina. Commissioner Smith is here. And Jacqueline has done a great job. I shared with Keith Hughes earlier in working with the city, in helping the relationship with the city and the chamber. And I can tell you that the initiative and the positive things that are going on here do not happen with everybody working individually. It happens by a synergy and a collaboration of all of us working together. So what are some of the residential and business initiatives that are both community friendly and business friendly? One is pretty simple. You keep the city hall open. Open during the lunch hours, open from 8 to 5. When I say open, everything is open. We're not closing to clear out drawers. We're not closing at lunchtime because everybody wants to go to lunch together. Well, we determined early on that sometimes at lunchtime is when people may want to come up and get a permit, may want to come up and ask some questions about this or that. So not every office is fully staffed. Obviously, we have to give everybody a time for lunch, but we stagger those times so that somebody is always available. Another thing we pride ourselves is just the accessibility. If I am not tied up in a meeting, if the department heads are not tied up in a meeting and somebody stops in, we don't make them come back. We don't have them make an appointment. We'll see them right then. And sometimes there's 2 or 3 people in line. You know, I'm working with the department head, a resident stops in, a business owner stops in, and we'll just keep taking them. Because usually the things of the office, the day-to-day operations, we can get back to. But I'd never want the impression that we are too busy now to take care of you. If there's any way in the world we can handle those issues right now. And if we can't, I mean, most of you are in business. There are times you can't handle it right now. It's going to take a little research. It's going to take some process to see what have we done so far, what didn't work, what's the next step. But at least the people know, okay, this is what the plan is. We will email you, we will call you, we will let you know within this time period where we're at, what the next step is, and what's going to happen. And that's important. I call that knowledge of results. I learned that back in the police department days. So many times people would call in, but if the officer, sometimes they don't want you to stop at the house because they don't want the neighbor to know they called, right? So if that officer simply calls them or sends them an email, if that's how the complaint came in, whatever, at least they know it was addressed. If they don't see the police car drive by or they don't see the problem abated, their assumption is they called in and nothing was done. So it's important that they know. It's also important that they know that we can't, do that. I can't, there's no ordinance that if your neighbor plants roses and you don't like roses, that I can make them take those out, okay? Sorry. There are things in my job description that I can do, and most of them are constitutional and legal and all that, but there are some things I can't. Well, you're the mayor, right, but they can have their roses. I have roses. I like roses, okay? We changed the permitting process, same-day permits for electrical upgrades, heating and cooling. Again, I don't want people to have to come back and forth if there's any way we can help them. We posted signs at City Hall, Mr. Shields' recommendation, to assist customers. Where do I pay my bill? Where do I sign up for utilities? Where's the building department? We have AEDs in every police car and in our fire trucks. We also have one at the Municipal Court and City Hall, and we thank the hospital for the donations of each of those. And we have those because the officers can get on the scene within 2 to 3 minutes and a squad 5 to 6. Well, that extra 2 or 3 minutes can make all the difference in the world when your heart's not beating. The council approved, not with tax dollars, but electric aggregation money, lighting of the downtown to create this beautiful place to come in the wintertime. That was the major draw that brought Castle Noel to buy the old Methodist church and create a museum there, which is now bringing busloads of people to the museum, which then benefits the greater downtown. So all of these little pieces are almost like a puzzle that over time all fit together. All of the parking in the city is free. We used to have meters. We took the meters out, which again, in promoting business, all there are time constraints so that they turn over. Like we did with the Community Development Department, by putting building, economic development, and planning and zoning together for a one-stop shop. We did the same thing with forestry, cemetery, and parks. And the reason for that, think about it, it's pretty logical. Not logical in most municipal governments, but logical from a business perspective. Today we have 2 or 3 burials, and we have two people working at the cemetery. That's a lot of work for 2 people to try to keep up with. So we can draw people over from the Parks Department and help with that influx. The next day, we don't have any burials, but now the Parks guys are behind because they helped with those burials yesterday, right? Now we can take those same folks and go over there. Or maybe we're having a mist tournament or some major event where the parks all need some attention. By using our staffing more efficiently and effectively, it uses the tax dollars as best we can, and I think that's what we're in the business to do. And then last but not least, January of this year, we took over with Dan's certification, Dan Gladdish's certification, we took over plumbing in the city. So residential and commercial plumbing, we're able now to have a true one-stop shop where people come in for their permits and they can get everything they need at one place and all of their inspections. So road improvements, infrastructure, I won't spend a great deal of time on this. But when I took office in 2010, our industrial roads were pretty deplorable. Not pretty deplorable, they're very deplorable. And the council worked with the administration. We pulled bonds. We have 20% of our income tax goes for infrastructure repair, roads and storm sewers. So we knew we could use a portion then of that 20% to pay the bond payment, use the rest for the ongoing things. So we made a commitment to replace every single industrial road in the city, and we're almost there. Lake Road's going to open, if not the end of this week, the second phase of Lake from Lafayette to Smith, if not the end of this week, early next week, and the only thing we have left is from the railroad tracks at the old county highway garage to the fairgrounds of West Smith. That'll be every single industrial road replaced at much thicker, and when we replace, we do everything underneath. We don't want to tear that road back up and replace a water line, replace a sanitary sewer. So when the road comes out, everything underneath it comes out and we start fresh. Because that road, when done correctly, the right drainage will last 30 years. I want everything underneath it to last 30 years too. I don't want to dig it up for no reason. So we've had great success with that. I know it's been a bit inconvenient with some of the one-way traffic and accommodating those things, but by the end of next year, those will all be done. We also cut Commerce drive-through from Branch to 18 to give the trucks another route instead of having to go down West Smith. We've got a couple bridges, South Elmwood and North Harmony, being replaced this year, one by us, one from the city. And we have a grant, a $300,000 grant, to do a portion of Foundry Street where the new go-kart business opened up. That gentleman invested a great deal of money in the city, and we applied for a grant and felt that we as well should invest in that road outside of that. So I asked Patrick to gather for me from 2012 to 2015 the number of grant dollars that the city has pulled down for road projects, in addition to the $2 to $3 million we're spending a year out of income tax, and that number is $7.9 million. $7.9 million of outside money has come in to assist us. So when it seems like everywhere you go, there's cones and pieces being replaced, that's intentional because we're trying to keep the roads in the best shape we can for the benefit of everybody. The US 42 widening project is likely not going to happen as quickly as we thought. They still have not sold the second round of Turnpike bonds, and that is what they need to actually fund the project. They've already funded the engineering, the design, and the property acquisition, but the funding of the project has to go through those bonds first. And this year alone, we always do a number of concrete street repairs. That's where they take out just certain squares here and there that are in bad shape. We're spending $600,000 on just patching concrete street repair, and another $75,000 on crack sealing, which is what's necessary to keep the water from getting underneath there, freezing, and then causing other aggravations for us. So some of our business initiatives, my group is willing to meet with businesses. If they want to move into town, we'll meet at their place, we'll meet at our place, we'll meet at a third-party site. You tell us where you want to meet, we'll tell you what we have to offer and what it's going to take to get you into the city of Medina and what kind of incentives that we have. There are times, Sandwich is the best example that we use, they are literally so busy during their busy season that the CEO, CFO, everybody is out on the line working on the salads, right? That's their salad time of year. So when they were ready to do their expansions, we took our team to their conference room. So now instead of having to leave the lines, get in a car, come up to City Hall, get around in a room, we were at their conference room. They come up, laid out their plans. We told them what they needed to do, what would work. We committed to them that our permitting and inspection processes would stay on their schedule, even if we had to rearrange other things to keep them on track because we had such a short window to get this job done. And as a result of that, those CEOs are now taping testimonials to go on the city website for other businesses to see what the city of Medina is doing to be supportive of businesses. We've our ribbon cuttings we do with the Chamber, we do with Main Street Medina, Economic Development Committee, my staff, and I had somebody say to me one time, "What's the big deal? What's the big deal? This business is open. They're gonna hire 2 or 3 people." And my answer to them is multiply that times 10 or 20. Because every business that opens and every business that we make a big deal about and is successful, more and more businesses, people are waiting in line to get on our square. They're waiting in line to get on our square because it's such a vibrant, walkable, pleasant place to be. And we're going to do everything in our power to help them become successful. Thanks. Thanks, Tim. I needed a drink of water. So let's talk about the Medina Brownfield grant. We got $1 million, you'll remember a couple years ago, $1 million, do phase 1 and phase 2 inspections. And again, synergy, collaboration. Medina City, all 4 surrounding townships, and Chippewa Lake, all part of this grant program. If you're not familiar with phase 1 and phase 2, it's to find out if there's hazardous materials in there, and if so, to what degree. It doesn't pay to remove them or mitigate them, but just to identify them. A, are they there, and B, what's it going to take? To what degree is it there? I'm pleased to tell you we're working on closing out that grant and have been gathering all the information to report to the EPA. But of that $1 million grant, that turned into $10.7 million, 10 to 1, over 10 to 1, in new investment and over 121 new jobs. So because of that grant, we saw the investment of many new businesses and many new jobs created. The city is working currently with the county on installing permanent connections for redundancy in our water system. You may recall we had a couple problems where Avon Lake froze the intakes. Well, they didn't freeze them. The lake froze and they couldn't get us water. So now to have a backup, we're attaching ourselves to the county because the county has the ability to get water both from Avon Lake and then back up from Cleveland water. So by their redundancy, it gives us redundancy. Kimberly Marshall, the 3 chambers, Kimberly, the 3 chambers, and Medina County Economic Development are working on the Medina County, Made in Medina County initiative. And that's started this past January, and they're going to have a big event for that in November. ODOT is funding an origin and destination study for us to help with the square congestion. This was an interesting stat. The website, we all have websites. Sometimes, we know we put information, some people go there instead of calling. We checked the stats on our website for a 12-month period, and they couldn't do it precisely, like January to December, but they could look at a full 12 months. And we found out with the city website, we had visits from every state as well as 48 countries outside of the United States for a total in 12 months of 244,000 hits. The last thing I'd like to remember or mention on this point is business helping business. I've talked to you about what the city does, but really it's a culture, right? People see the city helping the businesses. Pretty soon the businesses start helping the businesses. So the Courthouse Pizza opened, and the couple was having trouble making enough dough. So across the street are their competitors, Dan's Dogs, the Cupcake Factory, if you're getting dessert, not Cupcake Factory, Cupcake a Day, and Cool Beans. Now, Dan's Dogs and Cool Beans is competing, mind you, for the lunch crowd. Their staff came over to the Courthouse Pizza to help them make dough and go get supplies and help that business be successful. And when you hear stories like that, it shows you how unique and how special things are here in Medina. Some of the residential initiatives, I won't spend a great deal of time on this just to keep track here, or keep on track. We keep the parks open all year. I changed that when I took over. We used to close them in the wintertime. I want the law-abiding people in the parks, not the vandals and people tearing it up, and we have no idea what's going on behind those gates. So as long as the weather is permissive and we can get the roads cleared, I would just assume people are in those parks because they will let us know if people are in there doing things that they shouldn't be doing. We have a senior and disabled snowplow program that's been progressive. We started the very first year with 39 participants. Last year we had 67. Dawn mailed out the letters just this morning because they started asking us for it in about July. They get nervous about those things. This time we think we're going to probably break 70 pretty easily. The churches started April 2012 with what was called a big day of serving, where they got together for a Saturday morning and they went out and they helped seniors, helped disabled folks with just some of the needs that they couldn't keep up with themselves. It was so successful that the first Saturday since, in 13, 14, and 15, the churches have continued that program. And the local churches look for needs, and then we also use that senior snowplow roster for people to help. And some of it is very basic. Can somebody, I can't get out of the house. Can somebody pick up the twigs in my backyard? Can somebody put mulch down so my flower bed looks nice like everybody else's? So again, the city partnering with the churches helps maintain these things, lets people feel good about being in their homes. Some of the employee initiatives that we've instituted is leadership training for all of our department heads, sexual harassment training we did in 2012. We're currently looking for cultural diversity training. Cornell Carter, Reverend Carter from Second Baptist is working on that program for us, and we'll have that for the staff shortly. In 2012, we started the wellness program and a Healthy Medina initiative. We started the wellness in the city first, and then the Healthy Medina initiative in 2014. I don't think Dr. Tulisiak is here, but he has been a real champion for this. Medina City Schools is involved, the city is involved, and now they've opened it up to the community. We did CPR and AED training for every city employee, because if you're the guy on the ground, not breathing, and your heart not working, I'll tell you, you won't care if it's a parks guy cutting grass, or if it's a lifeguard, or if it's a police officer, you want help. So we've trained across the board all of our folks, and then Dawn does a good job of keeping track of when those certifications are getting near renewal, and then we redo that for folks. So let's talk a little bit about the police. I told you with the Narcan I would come back to that. So when I started with the police department, we used to go on the LST calls just to help. We would write down the names, we'd write down their addresses, their medications, things like that, and that would save LST time when they got there. They didn't have to go through all those questions. They could get the patient taken care of, get them loaded on the cot, and off they'd go. Well, that progressed then to training the police officers how to get the cots in and out, where's the oxygen in, where's the backboards, where's the neck braces, all those things. So now, instead of sending a second squad, because the two medics can't leave the patient, we can save that second squad for another emergency run and let the officers assist them. Again, using staffing more effectively and more efficiently. From there, we progressed with the AEDs, and then under Chief Baraducci's leadership with the Narcan training, and then we began to train our officers in trauma care. Trauma care in as much as applying appropriately a tourniquet to stop bleeding, trauma care in that to patch a chest wound that if you don't, it's going to suck air and the person's not going to be able to exchange enough air to stay alive. So we trained our officers in that initially, and they wear cargo pants. Cargo pants are the ones with the little squares down each leg, and they carry that. They're required to carry that on them because you don't know how far from your car you're going to be when somebody needs that equipment. Well, then after we got the officers trained for self-care, we thought, why not put kits together like a little tackle box in each car so that, God forbid, if we have an incident at a theater, at a school, instead of officers simply having to step over these injured parties who may not live long enough for the medics to get in there, we can sustain life or attempt to sustain life long enough for them. And let me just highlight two things. One is the Narcan. And I've had many conversations with people. Why are we saving them? If they want to kill themselves with heroin, let them kill themselves, right? That's an argument on this side. The argument on this side, my side, is when we have a intoxicated drunk driver run into a telephone pole and he's bleeding and he may have some broken bones, he may need his neck stabilized so he doesn't become paralyzed, we treat those people. We save lives. If you have somebody that was going excessively fast on a motorcycle, loses control and flips over the thing, we treat those people. And the reason that we're treating the Narcan people is it's my hope and prayer that those folks are going to come to the day when they realize that they need help and they get the help that they need. If I don't do that and they die, that's somebody's brother or sister or parent or friend that we should have done something with. And that's why we're using the Narcan. Let me tell you a more moving story, though, with the trauma kits. We had a young boy who got struck by a car in front of First Merit. It was dark. Cars making a left from Court Street onto Washington Street and strikes a 9-year-old boy. One of our younger officers gets on the scene with the trauma kit in his pocket, and a Marine or military person, I'm not sure the branch, X, he's got his shirt over the young boy. And he leans over to the officer and he said, "I covered his leg because it's being held on by the skin." Everything else was tore apart already. So the officer sees how badly that boy's bleeding and knows he's going to bleed out before the medics even get there if he doesn't do something. And he puts a tourniquet on that boy's thigh, and they take him up to Metro Life Flight. And that boy came to a council meeting to thank the officers, and he is walking and running and playing today because of what they did. So that is what law enforcement officers as caregivers looks like versus law enforcement officers as only enforcing the law. And when you look across the country and there's this disconnect between the community and the law enforcement, a lot of the credit goes to the style of policing, the community policing model we're using, and the chief's leadership in doing things the right way. Because if you're dealing with people day in and day out, when there's a medical issue, when there's a lost child, when there's some minor concern that is not criminal justice related, then how you deal with them when those criminal justice issues come along is a lot different than if that's the only time you see those folks. Community initiatives, you've all seen the flower urns. I can tell you that that's the #1 compliment I get of the entire city. I mean, not that other things aren't going on, mind you, but people notice that. You can't help but notice that. I had breakfast with Dr. Talisiak yesterday actually, and he said anytime his family comes from out of town, those that don't live here, it doesn't matter where they're going, they want to go through the square to get there. And he lives in the reserve, so when they're going to Fairlawn, that's a little longer trip, but right? But they want to see, we just want to see those flowers one more time. We want to see that downtown and those flowers one more time. And it shows, in my mind, it shows warmth and a community that's caring and upkept. So we took that community policing model that we just talked about a little bit and created the community government model, is what I call it, whereas, as I told you in my team example, we don't have silos of street department and water department. We have the city of Medina, and every one of us, day in and day out, from myself to the newest hire, all working to make the city the best we possibly can be. So when I first took office in 2010, I pulled Matt Wiederhold aside and told him, I'm having some concerns with council. The city is funding this at $30,000 a year. Having some concerns with the number of activities we're having. We'd like to increase the number. We'd like to increase the size. And he did. And he did so much that the city had to buy that corner drive-through bank, and we invested almost $700,000, both in the property acquisition and creating the restrooms, 10 male, 10 female, and a family restroom. And we took some heat for that, myself, council, because people were saying, geez, do you really need that? We didn't want the Porta-Johns downtown because it detracted from the beauty. But even the Porta-Johns, there was no way we could bring 20 of them down there without it taking up half the parking spaces. So by having this now available, I can tell you it's open, whether there are events or there are not events, and there's a steady flow of people using it. It doesn't matter if people are eating. I'm okay. Everybody okay? I'm not sure what that was. Yeah, people are using it, and we're thankful that we were able to get it done. We also asked council to name that little area around it the Bicentennial Park, and the reason for that is because by having it a park, we can then pull down grant dollars and each year do a little more, maybe put some benches, some more plantings, things of that nature. We opened our History Museum in Public Square November of 13, and so far we've had about 7,400 visitors attend that. And the last community initiative I'd like to share with you is Spokes Cafe. So we bought the house down on South Broadway Street where the trail was ending because we needed the property so that the trailhead, or the edge of the trail, was not as close to the railroad track as it would have been otherwise. So by buying that property, we could shift it further to be safer. So we weren't real sure what we wanted to do with the house. We knew we needed the property, but what do we do with the house? So we were approached by Peace Works Incorporated, and they said, we're looking for opportunities to employ folks with disabilities. And if you let us use this as a trailhead, rent-free, we'll pay the utilities and everything. We will refurbish the house, redo the grounds, clean everything up, and they did. And it's open today. And not only did they do that, but again, look at the collaboration and the partnerships here. Rather than have coffee for sale to compete with Cool Beans and some of the other coffee shop, rather than have snacks for sale to compete with other folks that are paying rents and utilities and stuff, they collaborated with other businesses to sell their product kind of as an outpost. So Cool Beans has the coffee and the cookies and the muffins. Mike's Jerky has some of the other snacks. They have some ice cream and soft drinks. And we are also, Jonathan Mendel is working on a creek restoration there. If you've not been down there lately, they've cleaned up the creek real well already. They're going to plant some new plantings in there to try to hold the creek banks in place from what they've replaced. They've also added some rocks to kind of keep the creek in the creek banks, and it's looking very nice. The airport initiatives, just of late, I won't talk about the older things, but we have the University Hospital there. We added Jet A fuel to fuel that, with the city getting a share then of the fuel sales. Earl Olson, under Flight Services, has built 10 new hangars. They are all full, and which brings the total amount of hangars out there at 76. And then that picture on your right, you probably can't read the wording, but on the nose of that airplane, it says the Pride of Medina, Ohio. And that plane was flown by Medina resident Joe Zarni during World War II. and he used that plane to fly General George Patton around the European theater. So a little history for our airport. Our financial position, the general fund reserve is about 63% over what we've allocated this year. The income tax is staying pretty steady. It's not increasing like we had hoped. We had projected about a 2% increase. It's staying pretty flat. It's not going down, but it's not increasing quite as fast. Our hope is that with these new businesses, new industry, new commercial development, that we're going to see more of that. We are seeing more of it in the jet areas with Montville Township. Partnership with Medina City Schools. The city provides the schools with 2 school resource officers, and the schools provide us with IT services that otherwise we'd have to contract out for. Superintendent Knight, we appreciate that very much, the collaborations. We have 1 civil service office. Other cities have a civil service group that takes care of the city and a civil service that takes care of the schools. We're paying 1 clerk that takes care of all of us. Again, saving tax dollars. We share the SALT purchases. We had some old city computers that could be used by the schools, so rather than sell them at auction for next to nothing, the city provided those to the schools. And Jim is the full-time Jim Shields is a full-time human resource director for the schools. We don't have a human resource director. We try to work our way, myself, Dawn, the law director. We do the best we can without having to fund another position, but Jim is always willing, if we're having something that needs a true human resource director look, to help us out with that, and Jim, we're very appreciative of that. But Jim also calls me and asks about security things and what do you think we should do about this or that. So it's give and take. It's not just all take. So we got 2 recent grant awards from the Ohio Department of Community Development. One is $300,000 for the critical infrastructure, which is over by the go-kart racing, and the other is for downtown revitalization. That was a very competitive grant. There were 75 applicants. Only 34 were awarded, and the city alone got 6.3% of the grant dollars, and we're working those things through right now. Another thing that we did collaboratively is CDBG funding we do every year. So if the cities had applied alone, we each would have got roughly $350,000. By the cities applying together, and the city of Medina took the lead on that, each of the cities got an extra $50,000. So instead of $350,000, we got $400,000 apiece. We're handling all the paperwork and administration, but again, with the 3 cities collaborating, we're able to bring another $150,000 into the city. Grants, the CHIP grants, CDBG grants, in that same 3-year period where I told you Patrick had $7.9 million, they've been awarded about $2 million. We've had many awards, the city of Medina, for being a best community for young people. Midwest Living magazine in 2012 called us one of the best places to celebrate Christmas. In February of last year, Governor Kasich gave his State of the State in Medina, one of the few cities that were outside of Columbus. Heritage Ohio, which is the overseeing agency for the Main Street programs throughout the state of Ohio, they held their statewide revitalization training in Medina, and the reason they did that is they wanted to hear from Medina what we're doing with Main Street that makes us so successful, so that they could take that back to the other Main Street programs throughout the state. And then in March of 2015, the Ohio Taekwondo Championship was hosted here, and that's the first time. This is a competition to get into the national championship, and this is the first time it's been held outside of the Columbus area. So April of 2015, Medina was selected as a quarterfinalist in Frontiers America's Best Communities competition. we were one of 50 selected out of about 400 applicants. And we partnered with the city, the CIC, which is our Community Investment Corporation, got the grant. The city, the Community Investment Corporation, Frontier Communications, Ben's here in the back, 620 Corporation, Root Candles, Community Design Committee, Discount Drug Mart, Gershbacher Real Estate, the Chamber of Commerce, Main Street Medina, and Medina County Economic Development Corporation. Again, because of the collaborative application, which was unusual, we think that helped put us out in front of some of the other applicants. So because of being chosen as one of the 50, we get $65,000 to refine our plan for the next round. So 35 of that thousand came from Frontier, 15,000 from Erickson, and 15,000 was a local match for a total of 65. So we're refining that plan. It's going to be submitted this fall, and then they're going to go from 50 to 15 in January of 2016, and then from 15 to 8 in April of 2016. And then those 8 will make a presentation to the final board, and the 3 winners will be selected in April of 2017. And what we're competing to win is third place, $1 million to implement these plans, second place, $2 million, or first place, $3 million. We're pretty confident that we can pull that $3 million to Medina and make this plan happen for the betterment of the entire community. So in July of this year, Medina is ranked 10th of the best Cleveland suburbs. We think that was a skewed survey. We think a little bit higher than 10. And then we were also ranked by SafeWise one of the safest cities. And this is a picture of Governor Kasich at the Medina Performing Arts Center. The entire place was filled. And I'm truly blessed to live in this great community, and thankful and humbled to have this opportunity to serve as your mayor. And I'd like to thank you for all that you do to make this community so strong. And if there's any questions, I'll do my best to answer them. If not, have a great day. Thanks.
Well, a round of applause for the mayor, too. I mean, all right, no, Mayor, thank you very much. As a longtime resident of the city, I'll keep this very brief. I know we're running out of time, but longtime resident of the city and growing up here since I was 2 years old in Medina schools and everything, I can't feel more blessed than to raise my family here and everything. And thanks, Mayor, and all the departments that are here represented today for all you do for us. Appreciate it, for businesses and for residents. I'll be remiss if I don't encourage everybody to stop at Title Boxing's table. I understand Byron's going to have you in a boxing match up on stage if you don't. But stop by, visit, see what this is all about. We've had a lot of exciting new businesses come to Medina, and you never know what's going to pop up. So Byron, congratulations on your new venture, and we wish you well. With that, I'll adjourn today's meeting, and we'll see you next month.